create some value. They should have some significance and positive for our society, positive for the total human race. So sometimes we think about innovations, but it is like those innovations are not directly affecting the life of us. So whenever we are doing some innovations, that should have some applied value also. And any kind of innovation, the seed, beach of that innovation is creativity. So we have to be creative enough. We have to take inspiration from nature. We have to look towards in and around us so that we can actually apply the creativity of the nature to creative some kind of man-made devices, to create some kind of applications that actually make a positive and significant effect in the applications which are directly related to our life. Okay, and for that innovation, the most important requirement in order to do creativity, the most important requirement is that we should have the vision to foresee that future, to understand that what is the requirement of the future. Okay, so in that case, I just wish to discuss some of the quotes from some of the visionaries which actually lead to the groundbreaking discoveries, groundbreaking innovations, which even today, even in today's era, they are making a mark directly or indirectly in our lives. So first of all, I think every one of us know about Thomas Alva Edison. Related to solar energy, what he had said, he had said that I put my money on the sun and solar energy because he actually thought that what a source of power. Why is it so? Because it is infinite. We do not have to pay for it. We do not have to beg some country to import oil to us and solve our energy problems. It is freely available to us. It is natural. It is not limited to some particular area. So countries like India, it is actually what a source of power. Another great scientist, Nikola Tesla. Nowadays, we actually use this term Tesla more often, and it is more related to the innovative company which we used to call as Tesla. But Nikola Tesla was one of the pioneer in physics in this in the previous century, and he actually said that the sun is the spring that drives all. Yes, definitely, directly or indirectly, all the natural phenomena that are taking place, they are driven by the sun. And the better way to obtain power would be to avail ourselves of the sun rays. He actually formulated some kind of discussion related to wireless transmission of electricity, and that wireless transmission of electricity he wished to generate from solar panels, and those solar panels he wished to direct from the space. So he used to call that technology as a space-based solar technology, and from there he wished to transmit rays to earth, and then he wished to convert that into electrical energy. So he was actually a visionary. He was the first one who thought about wireless transmission of electricity, on the basis of which nowadays wireless technologies are based upon. So Nikola Tesla has its own effects. And there is another scientist, Protes Steinmetz, Charles Protes Steinmetz, and I think many of us already know about hysteresis effect, and hysteresis effect, and all this alternating currents. It was the brainchild of Steinmetz only, and Steinmetz said that the sun, our greatest energy source, because they were visionaries. They already have that glimpse in their mind that in the foreseeable future, sun will drive our energy needs. Sun will be the source that will actually solve our energy problems. So they were the visionaries, and they actually motivated those whole lot of innovators who took up their ideas seriously and then guided their research, guided their products in that direction only. Innovation in that regard should include energy, and that energy solution should be given by the technology. So in that regard, I have already discussed that he said that Thomas Alva Edison said that I will put my money on the sun and solar energy, what a source of power. But he actually also said that I hope we don't have to wait until oil and coal run out before we tackle that. So actually, whenever we are doing some research or whenever we are taking some new product in the market or some kind of innovations, they are actually driven by the market itself. They are driven by the economy itself. And in that case, if we have some more cost-effective alternate available, then selling that product will always be a difficult task. So he actually said that. Not only from the cost point of view, solar energy has also other advantages. Something kind of it is a sustainable form of energy. It is renewable form of energy. It does not require any kind of moving parts to convert your solar energy into an electrical energy, and it does not pollute our environment. So there are other obvious advantages itself, but he actually in that area you wish to point out that we should not only look towards from the economic point of view, we also have to look towards the wider perspective and what are the actually real gain which we can get out of it. So now people are understanding that fact and giving more and more impetus on it. So we are changing. Actually, we are changing from the oil-based economy, from the oil-based market. We are trying to move ourselves towards the solar-based market. So I am just giving you some of the examples related to it. So I have taken it from website itself, Green Tech Media. There they have the report that there is a company easy, but it is not that one because coal till now is actually considered as a main source of electrical energy. But now, slowly but suddenly and surely, that people are giving more and more focus on renewables, and in renewables too, they are giving more focus on solars. You can also see that Chernobyl also goes solar with 1 megawatt installation, and Chernobyl, I think many of us know that Chernobyl experienced one of the devastating moments in the field of nuclear energy, and they have experienced one of the fatal, one of the most dangerous nuclear-based accidents in the history of mankind in the year 1986. So they are now also planning to convert that Chernobyl with the solar-based installation of 1 megawatt. There are also other reports that 29 renewable energy markets you need to watch out for in 2019 or to in coming years, and one of them is India itself. Okay, and you can see that in India we are running a program called Jawaharlal Nehru Solar Mission, and there we have actually thought about installation of 100 gigawatt of solar power plants by 2022. So that is a major policy change from Indian government, and they are actually on the process of achieving that. But the main problem is that although we are installing it, although we are putting it, but we are not creating these panels, these solar cells in India itself. We are importing them. So there is a need to actually do all this work within our country. And now with the Atmanirbhar project, the government of India is now putting emphasis to put all this in India itself. Many associate energy with oil. We all know in newspapers daily we used to read कि oil का rate बढ़ गया, oil का rate कम हो गया. And with the change in that oil rate, we always think about the Gulf. We always think about Saudi Arabia because they are the major source of oil for the world, and that's why Saudi Arabia is a major economy only because of that oil. But here, for the energy point of view, also anything which is associated with the energy, people try to put with the help of the word Saudi Arabia, means the king in that particular field. So why I am using this catchy word Saudi Arabia here? Because in many articles you can see that American waste, it is a part, American part which wish to be the Saudi of solar, means they wish to be the pioneer in the field of solar or the kingmaker in the field of solar. Okay, and now you can see that there are so many articles which are coming up with the name that every country is now wish to become the Saudi of solar. They every other one you can see that in USA there are so many articles that California is a big desert actually in US, and it is a most prominent point where the solar insolation is also very good. So it is favorable for the installation of the solar power plant. So that's why they wish to be the Saudi of sun, Saudi of the solar. And not only USA, now I am sharing with you many other uh, uh, websites where they are quoting that every other country now wish to become the Saudi of solar. Australia also wish to become the Saudi of solar. Brazil also wish to become the Saudi of solar. Now you can see that India also wish to become the Saudi of solar. Himalayas, Ladakh is the white desert, and they are also in almost 8 to 10 months. They have the good solar insolation, so also they wish to become the Saudi of solar. And Norway also wish to become the Saudi of solar. Oman wish to become the Saudi of solar. China wish to become the Saudi of solar. Chile wish to become the Saudi of solar. And the good point is that Saudi Arabia also wish to become the Saudi of solar. So you can see that the people are not looking towards this particular field from the fundamental point of view, from the bookish knowledge. They have their own idea to inculcate this particular field to improve the economics of their country. China has done so, US in the earlier days has done so, Germany in the earliest days has done so, Japan has done so, and now it is the time that India and even the Gulf, they are trying to move themselves from the oil-based economy towards the solar-based economy. And the report which I was talking to you, that Modi government sets revised solar mission target at 100 gigawatt, and they wish to achieve it by 2022. But you can see in comparison, China actually set the target of achieving 100 gigawatt that by only 2020 in the end of this year. But they have already, they might not achieve this 150 gigawatt, but they have already achieved almost 130 gigawatt till the end of this month. So this is actually motivating for all of us that the field has good economics associated with it. But what about other renewables as compared to the solar energy? So you can see that there are also other renewables which are available, and out of those, hydropower which we actually associated with the dams and the water flowing from the top to the bottom. So hydropower is actually also considered as a renewable, because there through the rains that water can be recycled. So considering that hydropower is actually the major source of renewable till now, but with hydropowers there is lot of capital investment that is associated, and we have to actually rehabilitate the entire villages that are lying there in the field of those dams. So instead of that, now we can see that almost 26% of today's renewable, they are from 26% of our total global electricity production till the end of 2017 was from the renewables. So it is a good amount, although it is only a quarter of 100, but it is a good amount for the renewables, because earlier in the start of the 2000, it was considered as that renewables are very costly and they cannot be used to solve the energy crisis. But with the depletion in the fossil fuels, with the problem in importing because of the strain in the ties between the countries, people are actually compelled to look towards these renewable energies. And till this time, only 2% is from the solar PV. You can see it is not a very big amount, and almost 16.4% contribution is from the solar power. But from the future point of view, it has been predicted that by 2038, about 50% of electricity will be from renewables. And in that 15%, you can see almost 15%. Out of that 50%, almost 15% will be from solar panel. And currently it was only 1.9. So you can see, and in hydro, you can see it was 16.4, and in the longer run, it will only constitute 16%. So there will be the large number of movement, large number of companies that will come up in this particular field, and they will actually dictate the market. New innovations with better cost to efficiencies, they will actually dictate the market. So there will be more and more reduction in the cost of installation of those solar PV power plants. And as people now understand that for countries like India, solar PVs are the obvious solution for our electrical problems. So in that regard, solar PVs obviously will drive our future. Okay, the PV beginnings. Now I will discuss a little bit about, in an interesting way, little bit about how the PV begins. It was in the year actually 1954, 66 years ago, and it was in Bell Labs. Started in 1954 at Bell Telephone Laboratories. Here, can I ask one question, Saurabh, to students? Students, have you heard about Bell Telephone Laboratories? Can you associate Bell Telephone Laboratory with any other kind of innovation? There are almost 8 Nobel laureates that came out of Bell Telephone Laboratories, and the recent one was in the year 2018, Arthur Ashkin for optical tweezers. So can you associate any other innovation with Bell Telephone Laboratories, which we used to study in our electronic course? Anyone? Do you able to hear me, Saurabh? Okay, no issues. I will continue. Okay, okay. Okay, I will check. No. Yes. Yeah. Good. So one Dr. Sanjeev Tyagi sir has given a good answer related to transistors, and I wish that answer itself. So thank you, sir. Transistor also was developed by Bell Laboratories, and it was actually in the year 1956. And all the others which students have answered, out of them, 3 are actually correct. So the interesting aspect is that Bell Laboratories has developed these solar PVs in the year 1954, but the actual development in the field of transistors, it took almost 1956. So solar cells concept was even developed before that. And you can see they at that time used to call that as solar battery. In the year 1954, they used to call it as solar battery, although the battery word is more or less associated with something which can store. But just to make it a catchy word, because that time solar cells word was not coined, so they called that as solar battery, and they just said that this particular device has a capability to convert the solar cells into solar energy into electrical energy. So these are those 3 prominent scientists who were associated with that particular project: Pearson, Chapin, and Fuller. And they actually are credited for the development of first silicon-based solar cell. And although the principle of solar cells, which we used to call as photovoltaics and all that, they already had been theoretically projected, but these are the 3. These were the 3 who actually first used silicon for the development of solar cells. So from NREL archives, NREL is National Renewable Energy Laboratory, and it is considered as one of the most standard laboratories. It is situated in USA, and it is considered as one of the most standard laboratory for standardizing our solar cells. Because whenever we are developing some solar cells and putting some kind of projections that this will give this kind of efficiency or that kind of efficiency, so NREL is actually giving you that authenticate certificate. In India, we have NPL, National Physical Laboratory in Delhi, so they are used to do it. And now there is National Institute of Solar Energy We used to call it at NICE in Gurgaon. They are doing this work for India. So NREL Archives has shown that their solar panel actually able to achieve the efficiency of 1.54. You can see their efficiency was only 1.54, but they were good in showing the theoretical aspect of that. This is the timeline for the work that they did. They have initiated that PV project in the year 1953 January, and within 2 years itself, they have deployed those solar panels in November 1954. Although as the efficiency of the cell was very small, the total overall cost to efficiency ratio of the project was very high. So that's why till the Gulf War that initiated in the year 1960, 1970s, so that Gulf War was actually responsible for giving the real impetus to this particular field. But yes, Chapin, Fuller, and Pearson, they gave the first major through for the development of the science behind the solar cells related to semiconductors. And the semiconductor solar cells actually leads the market even today for the design of these solar cell technologies. Even in those days, after completing the project, Bell concerned with consumer buy-in. How do these new electronic devices will work? Because at that time, the solar-based electrical generation was at very small per unit rate as compared to solar panels. So in 1958, just to give you a glimpse at how fast from those days now we have moved upon, in 1958, the total annual production for these solar cells was only 50 watt. And that also only from one company called Hoffman Electronics. And now we have already discussed around 2017, and now even now it has actually moved beyond 100 gigawatts per year. So it is really, you can see the world has moved. And in that too, the two countries which are currently leading is China and Taiwan. Taiwan is also an electronics hub, but still they do not have the capability of that much bulk production as China is doing. China actually is trying to show itself as the manufacturing hub of the world or the factory of the world. But now, because of our strained relationship, because of its expansionist ideas, we have to take that mentality away. We should not think only as a consumer. We should also look towards those things where we can actually also supply to the world. We can also be the top manufacturers. Here I have listed the top PV manufacturers that were actually shipped their panels in the year 2017. And there are 10 companies, and you will be amazed to see that out of these 10 companies, how many are from China itself. So you can see Jinko Solar, Trina Solar, JA Solar, JCL, Larry Solar, Yankee, Ryzen. They all are from China, except Hawa Q Cells, which is from Korea. Then we have two other companies, First Solar and Canadian Solar. Somebody will think, hello, is there any question? Saurabh? Okay, I'll continue. So it is Canadian Solar. So Canadian Solar, somebody might think that it is from Canada. But sorry to say that it is also from China, because their CEO and their management and managing board, they are all from Canada itself. And only this other company, First Solar, it is based on Malaysia. So out of 10, only two companies having the combined production of around 7 gigawatt, although the 7 gigawatt is also a bigger number, but you can see their combined output is even less than this Jinko Solar. And the major reason for this is that China is giving us the bulk on the basis of the bulk production and their subsidy-based economy. They are devaluating their currency every year or so. So they are giving the products at a cheaper rate. So now there is another thing, that cumulative installed capacity country-wise. Where are the most PV panels which are installed currently? So it is for 2011. You can see Germany is taking up the major chunk. There was the installation of about 17.3 gigawatt, and that installation actually, or this scenario actually has now changed. So I will share that also. And this is the graph for USA, and you can see actually for the installation of solar panels, it is required that the solar insolation, not insulation, solar insolation means number of sunshine hours per day for that particular region. So if somebody thinks that I will put my solar panels to the place where we have continuous rain and we have very little solar insolation per day for less than 100 days per year, so there is no reason to go for that particular area. That's why there is a need of mapping the entire region, entire country, where we have to look where we are getting the maximum solar insolation, and on the basis of that we have to place that particular solar panel. So it is for the US, and in the US there is California, there is Atlantic region, Alaska, where they are getting the good solar insolation, and that's why they are trying to become the Saudi of solar using those particular areas. And for us in India, you can see that this particular region including Kutch, Rajasthan, and also you can see this entire region which is mapped in orange, which is mapped in dark orange, and all this area, and which is actually constituting almost more than 60% of our country. It is best suited for this solar based power plants. And you can also see that in this Ladakh region, although it is not for the entire part of the year, most part of the year they are also getting good chunk of solar insolation. So if one is getting more than 5 hours per day for 1000 watt per meter square, then that particular region will be considered as good for the solar based power plant. And actually these areas which are mapped in dark orange, these areas are those which are even getting more than 5 hours of 1000 watt per meter square of solar insolation for almost more than 300 days per year. So these areas are most preferred for the development of solar based power plants in India. And now you can see that the installation scenario of the panels has also changed. This particular pie chart is for the country of origin, manufacturer, and this pie chart is for the country of installation. So you can see China actually able to fulfill its domestic demands from its own manufacturing, whereas for USA, for India, for other countries, these countries do not able to fulfill their domestic demands by their own production. So they have to import from China itself. So China is actually the major exporter for these solar panels from last 5-7 years, and India is actually the major importing country. USA also fulfilling almost 50% or 60% from its own setup, whereas India, where here we do not able to fulfill our domestic demands even by 1%. And another important aspect that one can see why these solar panels are getting so much popular, that in the year, these are just a 2-year comparison, but I can rather say I have been working in the field since 2009. So in the year 2009, the cost per watt for the solar PV panels was almost $2. And now in the year 2017, it is around 0.27, $0.49 per watt, and it is actually reducing further with the more and more bulk production. Now it is around 20 cent. It is $0.29 per watt only for 2019. And modules with more than 72 cells per module, they are currently dominating the market. What does it mean? Modules with 72 cells per module. It means that there are small solar cells, they are connected together. 72 such solar cells are connected together to give you a one solar panel. Okay, so this modules, the larger the module, the smaller will be the cost. So the companies are trying to inculcate more and more numbers of cells within a particular module, so that taking this cost further down. And mostly the cost of the solar panels are quantified with the help of this particular dollar per watt, or rupees per watt for our particular India. So what about 2020? So you can see now China has actually within a year installing 45 gigawatt. India surpassed 30 gigawatt. We have actually created a task of 100 gigawatt to achieve it by 2020. We have still reached only 30 gigawatt or somewhere around it. So it is still a long way to go, but it is no harm being aspirational, no harm being looking towards exaggerated targets, because even if we'll achieve half of it, it is my personal point of view, even if we'll achieve half of it, it will be a major gain for us. So that for the next major task, we will take that up to more than 100. So now for the total cumulative, China already has, I have actually talked to you that they are reaching almost 150 gigawatt. Whereas we are cumulative 30 gigawatts. It was around 2017 and 18 I am talking about. So China is far ahead of us. It is almost 7 to 8 times larger than us in that regard. I am just basically focusing my comparison to China because for us, we actually think ourselves as the major alternate of China. So instead of looking towards the smaller countries, we should move towards China better. So for the PV market, we used to call that as the China syndrome, because we as a PV engineer or we as a solar cell designer, mostly we have to deal with the Chinese company, mostly we have to deal with the Chinese people. So that's why we used to call that as the China syndrome. And because of this China syndrome, the only good thing is that although they are creating their monopoly, but the good thing is that the cost per watt of the solar panels is decreasing very fast. So for that, we can thank Chinese. This is the list of solar PV manufacturing companies in USA. So I just give you a glimpse that how many of them has bankrupted because of China. So only within 2 years, because of the China syndrome, within 2 years, 2014, you can see almost 80 to 90% companies was shut down. So it is not a good scenario. And in India itself, even in BEL, there are National Institute of Solar Energy, we have NPL and all that. We do not even once able to match them. We are far behind them. So we have to actually understand or realize the truth, and on the basis of that, we have to generate our products, we have to generate our capability. Okay. These are some of the pictures of facilities which are there. Some are, there is a plant in Gujarat, and in Wikipedia itself, you can get so many, the list of the power plants, world largest power plant. The one point that I wish to make here, the world's largest power plant is coming up in India, which is Bhadla Solar Power Plant. Bhadla Park, Rajasthan Desert, when it will be commissioned, it will be around 2,300 megawatt, and it will be the largest power plant in the world. And you will be amazed to find that the cost of per unit of electricity which will be coming out from this plant will be only 2.4, means 2 rupees 40 paisa per unit. And I know that many of us are paying, even for the first 50 or 100 units, we are paying more than 3.5 rupees per unit. So you can see that now the solar panels are giving us much inexpensive per unit cost of solar energy, per unit cost of electrical energy as compared to coal-based energy. So there is off-grid and grid connected photovoltaics. So earlier days, the grid connected list was smaller as compared to off grids. Off grids are those plants which are set up to meet the local demands. Let's say we have a faraway village, their village, it is not cost effective to take our grid to that village itself. So instead of taking our grid to that village itself, there itself, we will set up one kind of a microgrid where solar panels are actually fulfilling their energy demands, and that's why we used to call that as off-grid. So during the earlier days, these solar panels, the basic motivation was only the off-grid cases. But now you can see almost 100% of the cases, they are grid connected. So now there is no isolation of the solar-based generation from our total grid connected power plants. Now I will talk about the technology. I think many of you might not more interested towards the economics, but will be more towards the technology. So here, just to give you a glimpse that when I am talking about the solar cells market, even today the market is dominated by the polysilicon or monocrystalline silicon. So monocrystalline silicon has the most purest form of silicon, having the best crystalline nature of silicon, whereas in polycrystalline silicon there are many crystal structures of silicon which are possible, and in that case recombinations becomes prominent, and getting the highest possible efficiency out of them becomes difficult. But still you can see, because of cost perspective, monocrystalline silicons are costly, whereas polycrystalline silicons are not that bit expensive, because they are not as pure as monocrystalline silicon. So in that case, polycrystalline silicon combined with some form of innovative ideas that can give you the efficiency comparable to monocrystalline silicon also become very important for the solar cell industry, because they also wish to reduce their production cost. So in that case, you can see that the polycrystalline silicon and monocrystalline silicon, they almost have the comparable data, comparable statistics, but the market for other technologies is not that bit good. So that we have to look towards new innovations. So nowadays, new innovations are coming up that can give you the cost to efficiency ratio. That's why I always use this word cost to efficiency, because you can find in many areas where efficiency can be considered as 60%, efficiency can be considered as 50%, 40%, but those efficiency come at some cost. So their cost to efficiency becomes very high, and those products, making them available for the market becomes very tedious. So we have to look towards that perspective also, because economic drives the innovation and innovation drives economics. So it is a cyclic process, and we cannot decouple the two altogether. So here, just to give you a glimpse about the thickness, the sizes, and technology diversity related to the product. So basically, during the earlier days, most or even majority in the current scenario also, they are wafer-based technologies. And when we are talking about the wafer-based, the thickness of the wafer is always, this is not the aloo wafer we used to eat, actually. For all those who do not know about the wafers, actually this is the semiconductor wafer on which we used to design our semiconductor wafers. ठीक है, तो ये वेफर वो वाला नहीं है जो हम आलू वेफर में खाते हैं. तो ये this wafer actually is a silicon wafer, silicon material on the basis of which we used to design our semiconductor application based products. Okay. Semiconductor design, semiconductor products for particular applications. And here the thickness will always be more than the wafer. Wafer is, if it is more than 200 microns, then your entire product will be thicker than that. Okay, I'm not including the thickness of the glass here. Okay, and just for a perspective, our human hair is actually smaller than that. It is only 75 microns. And now here I have included some names, some prominent technologies other than the silicon technology, monocrystalline and polycrystalline technology, because here it is amorphous silicon is written, not the polysilicon or the monocrystalline silicon is written. So here there are organic solar cells. In organic solar cells, another branch of materials which are coming up very fast is considered as perovskite solar cells, or perovskite materials rather, because they are materials which can be used for other applications too. So these perovskite materials, dye-sensitized materials, dye-sensitized are some kind of dyes which we use for the dyeing our clothes also. Those materials for the design of solar cells, and those solar cells can be have the capability of molding, that has been written here as organic photovoltaic. But these organic photovoltaics, basically the name is giving because they can be foldable. And these dye-sensitized and perovskite solar cells can also be designed in that way so that they can also be made foldable. Okay. And these technologies more or less are considered in the class of thin film technologies. Why the thin film? Because here the film, the thickness of the film is much lesser than the thickness of the wafer itself. Okay, so there are so many technologies where we used to grow these films, and then we actually etch these films out of these wafers and put them on the flexible substrate so that we can make them in the flexible form, moldable form. Because nowadays you can see that we have wearable solar cells, we have foldable solar cells, we have handkerchief solar cells, and we have building oriented solar cells. So there are so many forms that are coming up very fast, which actually are related to some form of the other based on these technologies only. These are thin film technologies, and out of these technologies, one prominent one is 3-5 based technologies. And 3-5 based technologies are fundamentally actually can give you the maximum possible single junction output, single junction solar cell output. I am assuming here that all of you students are able to understand the difference between the single junction and multi-junction, because when we are talking about diodes, we talk about PN junction, and those PN junctions, if you only have one PN junction, then they are considered as single junction devices. And in the device, if you have more than one PN junction, or if you have more than one such kind of a junction where you can have a flow of charge carriers, that junction is actually considered, then that device will be considered as multi-junction. Okay, so here I am talking about the single junction 3-5 based semiconductors, and those single junction 3-5 based semiconductors have the capability of giving you the fundamentally highest possible output. But why they are not so prominent for our terrestrial means for our earth-based systems? Because they are again the same thing, the cost to efficiency of these products are very high, and these gallium arsenide based devices, because of their obvious advantages, they have good resistance for radiations, they have good temperature resistivity. So these devices are basically prominently used for space technologies. Whenever we used to see some satellites, on their wings, we always can find some solar panels in order to provide them energy. And those solar panels in those satellites are prominently designed from 3-5 semiconductors. What are 3-5 semiconductors? Why we used to call them as 3-5? Because they are from the third and fifth columns of our periodic table. And combining 3 and 5 semiconductors, 3 and 5 materials such as gallium arsenide, gallium nitride, we can design semiconductors. Okay, so they are good class of semiconductors, and they can give you a prominent output also. Every year, there is a publication of best research cell efficiencies by NREL. You can see NREL here, National Renewable Energy Laboratories, and this best cell efficiencies gives you an indication that how far we have reached with a particular type of devices. So you can see this is the name of the devices which is written here, and comparable to that, the numbers are given here. So you can see somebody can see यार कि जो market में solar cell मिलता है, that is only 18 to 20% efficient. So how could you reach beyond that? So you can see we have already reached beyond 45%. It is around 46% efficiency which we are getting from tandem cells. From what? From tandem cells. You can see this is 4 junction or more. And there are also concentrators. Concentrators are what? First is, one thing is that directly our sunlight is coming. We are not using any kind of glass optics. We are not using any kind of lens. And sunlight is directly falling on the panels. without any kind of concentration. Okay, so those are called non-concentrators. But when we are using some kind of big parabolas, we have dish antennas now. Those who are more than 20 years, they could imagine those large dish antennas we used to see on our terraces. So those large dish antennas when replaced by glasses, and those glasses then able to concentrate sunlight more on the solar cells. So that is called concentrator. So in that case, those concentrators are actually, in that case, you can see we are increasing the input. So that's why the output is increasing. Okay. So in that case, we can achieve 46% of efficiency. But again, because we are using so many external products, we are using complex circuits, we are using complex designing process. So obviously they will increase the cost. So cost to efficiency will not be that high in that case. Okay, cost to efficiency will be very high in that case. They will not be in the required limit. So the more prominent or people are more looking towards the highest possible efficiency which people used to have with the single crystal cells, single crystal crystalline silicon solar cells, or gallium arsenide solar cells, or thin film crystals. Okay, so with single crystal you can see it is somewhere around 27% for laboratory purposes. Not large area cells, but it is still a good value, 27%. Before moving further, I also wish to make you sure that what is the meaning of efficiency here. When I'm talking that something is 27% efficient, it means that that particular cell is capable of converting 1000 watt per meter square of sun rays or solar energy, which is actually coming onto the earth. The 27% of that within 1 meter square area, our solar cell can convert into electrical energy. Means if there is 1000 watt per meter square, which is we are putting on 1 meter square area, then our solar cell can give us the output of 270 watt. Okay, I think this might clear your understanding related to efficiencies. I have already discussed many things related to it. Okay, now I will move towards the solar cell basics. What are the properties of light, how solar cell works, parameter of evaluation of performance, and technological advancement in that case. Okay, so first I'll start with the properties of light. Before moving forward, Saurabh, is it clear everything? Is there any question from students? Okay. Okay. No, actually the problem is that if I have to check the chat, I have to do this kind of activity. Okay. No. So it is better that you should interrupt me in that case. Okay. So when I'm talking about the properties of light, the major purpose is to check what is the electromagnetic spectrum that our solar energy which is coming from the sun incorporates, which is coming onto the earth. Okay, and on the basis of that, I have to design my structure so that my device can absorb maximum from it. Okay, so many of the time when we are talking about the light, we confuse ourselves that we are only talking about the visible light, and that visible light spectrum varies only from 300 nanometer to somewhere around 700 nanometer. Okay, but it is not the case only. When I am talking about the properties of light, or when I am talking about the solar spectrum actually varies from around 250 nanometer to up till 3000 nanometer. Okay, it is in wavelength. So whoever is more interested in frequency, they can convert it to frequency just by using the formula C is equal to F lambda. Okay, so I am more or less will talk only in terms of wavelength here. So if somebody needs to work out in terms of frequency, I suggest them to convert them to frequency as per their requirement. Okay. And when I am talking about the light, absorption of light, so here I am not only talking about the wave property of light. Here we also have to look towards the particle part. So the elementary particle of light, which actually constitute the quanta of energy, the quantum particles we used to call them, are photons. So when I am talking about the light which is falling on the solar panels and the propagation of light through the layers of those solar panels, we not only have to deal with the wave nature of light, we also have to deal with the particle nature of light, and that particles of energy called photons. So when I am talking about the absorption of light, it means absorption of photons, because those photons actually constitute energy. And solar cell is nothing but a transducer, and that transducer needs some input energy so that it can then convert it into the electrical energy, another form of energy. Okay, so that transducers require input, and that input energy will be given by the photons. And those photons actually responsible for the creation of then electron hole pairs in our solar panel, in our solar cells, and those electron hole pairs will be then collected. Okay, so you can see, I think many of you have already seen this kind of electromagnetic spectra. And this electromagnetic spectra basically in the terahertz range, those who are more interested in frequency part. So this visible light is actually the terahertz range. So this terahertz range, more than the frequency of your microwaves. Microwaves we used to learn in gigahertz. So it is more than the gigahertz, more than microwaves. Okay, so in that range, basically our solar cells work, and we have to absorb all these photons which are falling on this area to absorb that. Okay, so till this part I am just talking in a theoretical term without giving you a quantitative analysis that what is actually those photons in part for particular wavelength, because each wavelength has another different number of photons associated when they are falling from the solar cells. So just to give you the glimpse why visible light is more important for designing solar cells, because when solar energy or coming from the sun, or the light which is falling from the sun, it has more number of photons which are actually within this range. The maximum number of photons that are falling from the sun, you can see from 300 nanometer till 2500, they are say this graph is saying. This graph I have also taken from NREL only. So here you can see that the maximum number of photons which are falling from the sun, they are within this range, 300 nanometer to 1000 nanometer. So we have to design some kind of a device which can actually able to tap this entire spectrum, so that we can get the maximum possible output from our solar panels. Okay, so there should be obvious questions why we did not able to reach 100%. What are the basic problems in reaching those 100% values, efficiency values? So I will discuss them briefly also. In that case, so why are these three lines? This first green line actually give us an indication of the solar radiation just outside the sun. Just outside the sun. This is red line. This red line gives us an indication of solar radiations which are reaching just above the earth, before the start of the atmosphere. Because actually atmosphere is responsible for filtering out so many photons or so many spectrum part which is coming from the sun. Okay, so in that case, this blue line is actually the one which is responsible for the photons which we are receiving on the earth. Okay, so our devices, if they are designed for working on the earth, they should be able to tap all these photons. Another important thing which is associated with properties of light is called air mass. What does it mean? Why it is important? Because when I have shown you these graphs, this blue graph is for air mass 1.5. And why I have included this here? Because let's say my device is giving 40% of efficiency for AM0, but I am using it on Earth for AM1.5. In that case, the efficiency which I have achieved for AM0 is not applicable for AM1.5. So what is air mass? In the simplest of term, you can see that this is the perpendicular of sun radiation which we are getting, and this is the actual sun rays which we are getting on the earth. So this is the hypothetical line, and this is the real sun rays which we are getting on earth. So in that case, this theta, this cos theta value gives you the value of 0. When the light is coming perpendicular parallel to this x, then this will become 0. So in that case, your cos theta will become 1. Okay, so that is called AM1. And maximum time when we are taking standard parameters on earth, then we have to be more focused on AM1.5. So this AM1.5 actually corresponds to around 42.5 degrees of this theta angle, and maximum times our sun rays are characterized as they are coming around 42.5 degrees from the perpendicular. Okay. Then what is standardized solar spectrum? Why I have included this standardized solar spectrum? Because let's say I am designing my component here in Nagpur, and you are designing your component in Jabalpur, and somebody is designing his or her component in Japan or in Australia or in USA. They can use different parameters to characterize their device. But if I have pointed out that my device is giving around 50% of efficiency, then the other one who is working in different part of the world, to able to validate that, there is a need of some standardized procedures, there is a need of some standards that are set up by NREL or all the prominent innovators and technicians all around the world. It is actually considered as the solar cells are standardized for terrestrial solar cells are standardized for AM1.5G spectrum, which is considered to be giving 1000 watt per meter square. That's why I was talking about 1000 watt per meter square. So in that case, when I am talking about the efficiency, it should able to tap a part of this 1000 watt per meter square of solar radiations which are coming on the earth. Okay, so on the basis of that, we need to characterize our solar cells. And not only this, there are some other standardized part also. Let's say the temperature should be 25 degrees C when I am characterizing my solar panels. When I am characterizing my solar panels, we also need to lay out that whether it is for 1 sun, 2 sun, 3 sun. 1 sun means I am not concentrating at all. 2 sun means I am concentrating twice the power of the normal sun radiations. Okay, so in that way, that also I have to put upon atmospheric pressure. It is 1 atmosphere when I am characterizing my solar cells. Okay, so in that case, we have to carefully check whether I have standardized my particular design or not. On the basis of that only, my output is applicable for validation for some other particular person. Okay. So now we have actually discussed the important parts of properties of light, which are more or less prominent for solar cell applications. Now I just briefly discuss how solar cells work, because till now I have discussed about economic parts, I have discussed about the input part, because what is the need of discussing these properties of light? They actually quantifies the input. Now how we can convert this input to our desired electrical output. So just with the help of this smallest or simplest of diagram, here you can see a simple structure of solar cell, and you can even consider it is a modified diode. Okay, PN junction diode. So here this emitter and base are PN junctions, and there are two additional setups. There are two additional layers. At the top there is anti-reflection coating, and at the back there is बैक रिफ्लेक्टर, विच इज ऑल्सो बीइंग यूज्ड एज रियर कॉन्टैक्ट यानी कि पीछे वाला कॉन्टैक्ट. ओके, क्योंकि जब भी हम कोई इलेक्ट्रॉनिक डिवाइस बनाते हैं, व्हेनेवर वी आर गोइंग टू डिजाइन एनी इलेक्ट्रॉनिक डिवाइस, वी नीड टू कॉन्टैक्ट्स. व्हाई टू कॉन्टैक्ट्स? टू कलेक्ट टू डिफरेंटली पोलराइज्ड charge carriers, electrons and holes. Okay, so negative, if we have negative at the top, that charge carriers are electrons, and if we have positive at the back, the charge carrier should be holes. Okay, so that way we have to look towards the contacts. There are two supporting structures, anti-reflection coating, because the obvious question which I discussed earlier, that students or even novice of the field can think that कि 100% efficiency क्यों नहीं आता? Why are we not achieving 100% efficiency? So the answer is that whenever light is falling on the top of a PN junction, because of sudden change in refractive index, I think all of you might aware about what is the meaning of the term refractive index, because even in our 8th and 9th classes, we used to learn about lenses, and their lenses itself, we used to learn about refraction and reflection. So I am assuming that all of you know about refractive index. So there is sudden variation in refractive index, because of which almost 30 to 40% of the incident solar energy is wasted from reflections itself. So there is a need to put some kind of light management structure. These structures called anti-reflection coatings and all that, they are considered as a part of light management structures, so that they can create electron hole, so that they cannot be reflected and move towards the junction to create electron hole pair. Okay, and this is the back contact, because why there is a need of back reflector, this back contact also act as back reflector, because here what happens, that the material itself is responsible for the electron hole pairs, and the photons, those having energies more than the band gap of the material which we are using to design solar cells, only those photons can create electron hole pairs. Okay, is it clear? My sentence says that only those photons, because each and every photon has an energy associated with it, and that energy can be given out by the Planck's relation, E is equal to hc upon lambda. I think all of you might be aware about this relation. E is the energy, h is the Planck's constant, E is equal to hc upon lambda. E is the energy, h is the Planck's constant, c is the velocity of light in vacuum divided by lambda. Lambda is the wavelength of that particular photon, and that wavelength of photon actually dictates the energy of that photon. So as you can now find that E and lambda, energy and wavelength, they have the inverse relation. I think inverse relation is also clear to the students. Energy and lambda has an inverse relation. So all those photons which have the smaller wavelength associated with them, they have the higher energy, and the photons which have the higher wavelength associated with them, they have the lower energy. So only up to particular wavelength of photon, they have the energy sufficient to create this electron hole pair out of the PN junction. Okay, so any material having ability to create electron hole pairs out of photon can be used to design solar cells. It is not only silicon, it is not only semiconductors, any material. The only requirement is that the material should be defect free, so that the generated electron hole pair, instead of recombining, they will be collected at the junction and then transported to contact, so that they can run towards the outer circuit to give you the useful electrical energy. I think this is a good enough introduction for a novice, because it is not anything which is different from the diodes. It is more or less like a diode only. Okay, so in diode also there is a need of external bias, but here there is no need of external bias. Okay, that's why it does not require any external source of energy. So that's why it is electrical energy generator. In contrast to the battery based diodes, where diodes actually consume energy taking from the battery itself. So I hope that students will read it further, that what are the other critical things related to solar cells. There are many important parts, that why this emitter is small, why this base is thick, how to optimize this anti-reflection coating, how to optimize this rear contact, how to design these front contacts, whether it is possible. Because if this one important thing I wish to especially mention here, that these front contacts are required to be small enough, because if these front contacts are thick or they are taking more area at the front, less area is then available for our sunlight to enter into our active design. The materials which actually do the electron hole pair generation, those materials are known as active materials. So, for solar cells, silicon, gallium arsenide, perovskite, organic materials, they all are active materials. So it is required that our front contact should not take much of the area at the front, so that maximum sunlight should enter into the electron hole, should enter into the below layers to create electron hole pairs from the active material. Okay. Next, I am taking up the parameters which we used for the evaluation of performance of solar cells. So I am just giving you the definition, and on the basis of that, I am just discussing a bit with you all. First of all is quantum efficiency. What is this quantum efficiency? This quantum efficiency quantifies the number of photons which are actually, or the number of carriers which are actually collected at the external circuit, means at the output of the front and back contacts, divided by the number of photons which are incidenting. Means quantum efficiency is nothing but the ratio of output by input. Okay, and this quantum efficiency is very important not only for solar cells but for any other kind of device which getting input from photons or getting input from some other kind of quantum particle and generating some other form of quantum particle. Okay, because both electrons and photons are quantum particles. So dividing electrons which are being collected at the output and divided that by the number of photons which are impinging on our solar cells give us the quantum efficiency. And for an ideal case, what should be the quantum efficiency? It should be 100%. That means all the photons which are impinging on our solar cells, they should be able to create electron hole pairs. Okay. In the details, when you will go, you will find that the quantum efficiency is further divided into two parts: internal quantum efficiency and external quantum efficiency. Okay. But I am not going into the detail of all that. Second important point there is short circuit current. Instead of short circuit current, maximum times what happens that solar cells are quantified as you can see here, short circuit current density. Why is it so? Because when I am taking just amperes, quantifying my device only in terms of amperes, then that device do not make any point related to what is the area of my device. Okay, so that's why it is a common practice, instead of quantifying the device for short circuit current, they are being quantified for short circuit current density. What is the current we are getting out of the device per unit area? Okay, and this short circuit current depends on so many factors. That's why per meter square, why is it included? Because this short circuit current itself depends upon the area of a solar cells, depends upon the number of photons incidents, because that is actually the input. Because if input is changed, then output obviously will change. The spectrum of incident light, that is also our input. The optical properties of the solar cell. What does it mean? The optical properties of the solar cell means the optical properties of the layers with which we are designing our solar structure. Okay. The optical properties of the solar cell means the properties of the materials which we are using to design those solar cells. Then the collection probability, we have already discussed that with quantum efficiency. Okay, the collection probability is actually the after effect. Okay, and just to give you, because in the solar cell efficiency chart we have already seen the final efficiency. Record efficiency which we have achieved till now for silicon solar cells. Here I have put upon the maximum current which we have achieved from record current which we have achieved out of silicon solar cell, it is 46 milliampere per centimeter square. Okay, per centimeter square. It is not centimeter. Sorry for my mistake. It is milliampere per centimeter square. And laboratory device, it is the maximum possible maximum possible current which is possible from the silicon solar cell. Whereas till now we have already achieved 42 milliampere per centimeter square. Okay, so now okay. Next is open circuit voltage. The open circuit voltage is another important parameter, and the good thing is that you not need to learn any new equation for that. The equation which actually relates your open circuit voltage and current which is associated with your solar cells, the equation is just equation of your diodes. Okay, so just using a general diode equation modified for the light generated current, this IL is the light generated current, modified to include the light generated current, can give you the value of your open circuit voltage. Okay, what is short circuit current? Actually, short circuit current is the current which we actually calculated when the circuit is closed, circuit is short, there is no voltage which we are taking out of it. Okay, and what is open circuit voltage? When there is no flow of current we are taking out of the design. In that case, that's why the name itself is open circuit voltage and short circuit current. Okay, and these are the two most important parameters on the basis of that we define our efficiency. A casual inspection of the above equation might indicate that V goes up linearly with temperature. So you can see also there is a relation between temperature. So that's why using temperature term carefully also requires, because the other part of the statement is that, however, this is not the case as I naught increases rapidly with temperature. Okay, so when we are thinking that actually with this relation VOC have to increase with temperature, but it is not so. VOC also has a relationship with this saturation current. I naught is the reverse saturation current. So with the increase in temperature, reverse saturation current increases, and that has a adverse effect. That has an adverse effect on VOC. So claiming the relation of VOC or voltage and current with temperature is a tedious task. There are explicit equations for that, and we cannot directly claim that with the increase in temperature our VOC will increase or our current will increase. Okay, or performance will increase. Another factor is called the fill factor. Fill factor is defined as the ratio of the maximum power from the solar cell to the product of VOC and ISC. So actually VOC and ISC are those 2 points where our power is zero, because VOC is calculated at that point where current is zero and ISC is calculated at that point where voltage is zero. So we know that power is V into I. So in that case, the output power from the device cannot be maximum. Okay. So instead of those 2 points, which are just have their importance for the quantification, the major practical point of operation of solar cell is maximum power point. Okay, where the multiplication of both V and I will give you the maximum power out of the circuit. So at putting that particular point on the graph, we actually sketch straight lines to x-axis and y-axis, and on the basis of that, the squareness of that curve give you the value of fill factors. Okay, a solar cell with a higher voltage has a larger possible fill factor since the rounded portion of the IV curve takes up less area. Okay, so I know that within a single lecture or within a single talk, it is difficult for all of you to get best out of everything, but still, this is just to make you understand that these are the important points that one has to look when somebody is talking about the solar cells. Okay, so next time whenever somebody will talk to you about the solar cell, you can ask them the question, what is the fill factor of that particular device? What is the short circuit current? What is the open circuit voltage? What is the quantum efficiency? And next, what is the actual quantified efficiency of that device? So efficiency is nothing but the ratio of energy output from the solar cell to the energy input from the sun. Maximum to input. maximum output to the maximum input which we are getting. So in order to quantify the input, we use for terrestrial solar cells AM 1.5 conditions having temperature of 25 degrees C at 1 atmospheric pressure. Okay. And for space-based solar cells, we actually measure them under AM0 conditions. Okay, the input power which we put here is 1000 watt per meter square or 100 milliwatt per centimeter square. Okay, so these are the 5 most important terms which are associated with the quantification of solar cells. So we should, I expect that all of you for your future will always remember this, because now solar cells become so prominent that some way or other in the future we will definitely come across them. So this is the graph which actually we encountered when we are working with the solar cells. So this is the IV curve and this is the power curve. So in the power curve you can see here also at ISC power is 0, at VOC power is 0, maximum power point is somewhere here. Okay, which is here in the IV curve. And when we are talking about the fill factor, this will give you the squareness. We put one line straight to y-axis, one line straight to x-axis, and then the curve part which is under that squareness is considered as the fill factor. Okay, next, the final part is the technological advancement that are being going on. So through this curve, we have already seen that the majority of the thing which is taking place currently is with silicon, crystalline silicon. Okay, but the higher output can also be possible with silicon heterojunction interdigitated back contact based devices. Okay, this is one of the prominent development that are taking place currently. What is heterojunction here? Silicon hetero, I don't know whether you all know about this word hetero and homo. Homo junction, homo PN junction means both P and N type material are of same material, same component. Means both P and N are designed out of crystalline silicon. Whereas when I am talking about heterojunction, in that case, one of the two may not be of the same kind. Okay, they are of different kind actually. So here you can see Sanyo actually responsible for the development of those heterojunction intrinsic cells, which include amorphous, hydrated amorphous silicon together with microcrystalline silicon. They are actually designed them in the form of PIN type, and they have exceptional stability. And now Sanyo has been purchased by Panasonic, so it is the courtesy of the Panasonic, and they have actually designed both the contacts on the rear sides, both negative and positive contacts on the rear side, so that they will get the highest possible area at the front for allowing the light which is falling on the anti-reflection coating to move to the active region. So there are so many such kind of innovations which are going on. I cannot have the liberty to go for each and every kind of device, but still just to give you a glimpse that yes, the people are looking towards it. The people are trying to find out the possible solution to take the output as much as possible to make it beyond the theoretical limits even. Because sometimes people are claiming that even one photon can create 2 electron hole pairs. So in that way, quantum efficiency will become 200%. So is it possible to go beyond the theoretical limit? And another important aspect, that theoretical limit was put forth by Shockley and Quasar, actually responsible for the development of transistors, diodes, Shockley. So you can see that all these things are interrelated. This is just a small video related to it. You should watch. These are the pyramidal structures which has been used for the design of the anti-reflection coating. This is the back contact. Back contacts, both positive and negative back contacts are designed at the back. And then there is silicon dioxide as a buffer layer placed to isolate active layers. Okay. And this is the simplest of the 3D designs that I can show you. Okay. there is another class called bifacial solar cells. So these bifacial solar cells are required to mention here because these bifacial solar cells have the capability to absorb from both sides. Because till now what we are discussing that solar cells should put light only from the front, and their back contact can be designed in between, whereas here in bifacial solar cells they are designed in such a way that they can absorb from both sides. So there is another important class, but here we should look from where the back side will get the light. So for the back side, we should design some reflectors at the back that can reflect the light which is coming to the ground to reflect it towards the back side. Okay. So it is difficult. Actually, the difficulty is that it requires extra components for the sufficient desired working. Although they can give you the better output, but here again the question comes to everyone's minds, that should come to everyone's mind, is cost to efficiency ratio. Okay. But yes, it is an exciting class, and people should look towards it and try to find out how can we improve them. Okay, so this is one of that prominent design. Those who are interested in the details of it, they can write to me, because right now with the time which is available to us, it is not possible to go in detail with each and every kind of device. But if someone is interested, they can write down to me. I will put my email here after the talk. So you should try to appreciate the fact that just with a simple PN diode, the modification of PN diode structures, how these photon to electron converters, transducers, can do a magic for you. Yes. This device. Actually, when I am talking about the solar cells, they are maximum times designed on 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter scale. Okay, so then with the help of that 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter scale design, we used to combine them serially for creating that 72 cell module. I think if you have not missed that part, I have written in the starting slides that each module or each panel, it is required that they should have 72 cells. Okay, are also possible. Okay, so here they have, when they are working with Panasonic for HIT based solar cells, so there they have first of all designed with by 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter solar cell. But the good thing with crystalline silicon solar cell is that if they are being designed on wafers, and if they have the capability of handling 2-inch wafers or 4-inch wafers, 8-inch wafers, even now people are working with 12-inch wafers, so we can even scale it up. Okay, so although they have it, yes, definitely. Actually, actually, this is where our lithography comes into play. Okay, lithography and etching processes come into play. But with the development in the optical processes, development in e-beam lithography processes, development in resolutions, it is even possible, as it is written, these sharp corners are only of 0. This thickness is only 0.2 mm, and these sharp corners will only be in microns. Even nowadays, it is possible to control these corners in micrometer dimension or in nanometer dimension, even sub-nanometer dimensions. With the increase in the resolution of lithographies, even now we have the development of bottom-up approaches. I do not wish to bore students more because they might not be interested in all this, but still with the development of novel fabrication processes, novel design processes, lithography and etching processes, even it is possible to control to the tens of nanometer dimensions. Okay, am I answering your question? Or hello? Is there any other question? Okay, okay. So this is just one of the installation which has been done with the help of bifacial solar cells, but still they are in the development phase, and people are trying to understand more or less what will be their cost dynamics, and whether they will be good for the future or not, and all these things, because research is something which requires to be continued. Okay, and only sometimes what happens with accidental cases, if that particular component or that particular product is not good for solar cells, that can also be used for some other thing. Okay, now there is one interesting thing: floating photovoltaics. I have discussed with you all that we are now going to design flexible solar cells and all that. So you can see that floating solar cells, because what happens, one of the problems that are coming up with solar cells installation nowadays is the requirement of the land. And with the requirement of the land, the cost dynamics that are associated, because people sometimes resistant to give their land for any kind of installation. They thought that why should I give my land for that installation and all that. So now people are coming up with novel kind of installation processes, and you can see that one itself in India, Kerala, that 500 kilowatt of installation has been done, which is floating in nature. Okay, and it does not matter whether it floats or not, until and unless it is capturing the sunlight. And here the water is in the control of governments only. It is not in the control of some individual. So it is better to go with these kind of installations without taking permissions from individuals and all that. And also this will not disrupt any kind of cultivating land and all that. And here it is just to give you a glimpse of Chinese solar farms, which is also floating in nature. It is actually equal to 121 football fields. Okay, if you wish to again. Okay, okay, okay. Sorry. There is no difficult part. The problem is that we do not have any kind of semiconductor fabrication facilities available in India. Uh, 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 Even world is moving towards 2 nanometer transistor technology, 4 nanometer, 7 nanometer transistor technology, and we are still, even in the lab facilities, we are at 180 nanometers at SCL in Chandigarh. So they can through INUP, but the thing is that now INUP is currently not active. Okay, so you have to go through the individual contacts and all that. But yes, in the future they are again coming up. I think in the December or January, INUP will be active again, and then students can go to. Yes. Okay, so students can go to other institutes also, and currently there is another scheme of DST. It is, I think, Vigyan, something called Accelerate Vigyan. Okay, the Accelerate Vigyan scheme, students can apply for it and go for internship to bigger institute, to the institutes of higher education, to get some kind of hands-on experience or some kind of experience related to these particular fields. Okay, they are not only related to labs. My basic perspective while discussing with you all is that to give you a glimpse that all these things are not only related to labs, not only related to such kind only for PhDs or only for academics. These have their own economical values. If you can start some kind of investment in the field of technology, then that will definitely give you a return not only from the individual perspective but from a largest perspective of the country. Okay, and when somebody is importing 1.8 billion of solar panels within 1 year, you can see how much big market is available for us. Actually, the problem with us is that our industries do not wish to make investments. They just wish to import from some other country which is more comfortable for them, and they just include their profit and sell it to others. But it does not actually make a sustainable model. So we have to move beyond that. And these are some of the technologies which are definitely define the market in the coming future, as some of them are already being fabricated on large scale, on bulk scale. Some of means out of these all, the three most prominent that where people can look towards is cadmium telluride, 3,5, and perovskites. Okay, and perovskites with silicon, they are the futures, definitely the futures. I can bet on it. Okay, so people should look towards it. Those who are looking for the higher studies, they can also look towards it. Those who are directly trying to get some kind of career after completing their undergraduations, they can also look towards the companies which are working on these device perspectives. Okay, so I think you all should take that particular field seriously. Okay. There is another good term called energy payback. I will not go into the details of it. Energy payback is, the point is how much time our panel will return all the amount that I have invested on it. And with better or smaller values of cost to efficiency ratios, the time will reduce further and further. Okay. And then in a longer run, it will be possible to create those devices whose payback time is only 2 to 3 years. Okay, currently the payback time is around 4 to 5 months. 4 to 5 years, or even more than that for less efficient cells. In the further case, it is required that we should move beyond them. Okay. Amorphous silicon is a kind of silicon technology where your silicon is not in order, like crystalline and polycrystalline. So amorphous silicon is not that bit costly. Cadmium telluride and CIGS and CZTS both are thin films. They are the commercial leaders in thin films currently. It is one of their designs, and CIGS now also being used with silicon, and cadmium sulfide is basically is a heterodunction device that is designed with cadmium telluride. Okay, so these are some of the possible designs for CIGS based thin film cells and cadmium telluride thin film cells. Their best cell efficiencies has already achieved. It is not only for the lab, it is for the bulk silicon device. It is, and First Solar is the leader for cadmium telluride solar thin film solar cells. Okay, and 23% has been done by Solar Frontier. It is a German based company. Okay, and First Solar, yes. There are many who are doing it. Actually, I also used to do all these things, whereas means our VNIT, whereas they can look towards IIT Bombay, they can look towards the National Institute of Solar Energy, they can look towards a National Physical Laboratory, they can look towards IIT Jodhpur, and many more. Means they should look towards. But the thing is that they should look what kind of training they wish. Whether they wish to go for device based training or whether they wish for system based training. Okay, they are two different parts. I am more or less concerned towards the device part, whereas electrical engineers are more or less concerned towards the system part. Okay. Have I answered your question? So should I? Okay, 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 okay. So I'm just skipping this part. It is just for the commercial interest, how the people are doing it. Okay. Terrestrial solar cells, conventional responding to one specific portion of the spectrum. Actually, there is a difference between single junction solar cells and multi-junction solar cells. When we are designing a single junction solar cells, there is only a one material which is associated with that, and only the photons which will have the capability to create electron hole pairs for out of that active material can give you the efficiency from your device. Okay, whereas why the multi-junction solar cells are then required? Multi-junction solar cells can give you the capability that although the single junction solar cell can only tap this much of a spectrum, the multi-junction solar cells can tap even the larger part of the spectrum because of incorporations of multiple materials having different band gaps. But as and when we are increasing the number of junctions in devices, number of materials, dissimilar materials in devices, there is always a possibility that the fabrication problems will arise. And because of which there is a strain and stress in the layers, and that will create the recombinations at the interfaces. Okay. So ultimately, if you are wishing theoretically to get some gain out of those devices, that will be trade off by the recombinations. So in that case, you have to check the materials which have the capability to combine together and at the same time can give you a prominent increase in the absorption of the larger part of the spectrum. Okay. So there are various ways by which you can do it. 3-5 semiconductors are prominently used for these tandem cells. Nowadays, perovskite silicon solar cells are also coming up fast. So all these things you can in the future look towards for your research perspective or for your future design perspective. Okay. There are also concentrator solar cells. As I have told you, these are flat solar cells and there are concentrator solar cells. The problem or the good part with the concentrating solar cells that they are concentrating more amount of sunlight on a smaller cell. So you not need to make a larger area solar cells. On a smaller area solar cell also you can do that work. But the bad thing is that, or the contrasting thing is that you need lenses or you need some mirrors that will actually take up the major portion of the design. So in that case, if you are looking towards better cost to efficiency, you have to optimize the overall design. So at what height he wish to bake? 100? No, at what height he are comparing? No. I just wish to know at what height he wish to install, whether he wish to install on Himalayas or whether he wish to install on the plains or where. What is the difference in the height he is talking about? So no, I am just kidding. So the thing is that height does not matter enough because the height from our grounds to the horizon is not that much. The more important part there is that shadow. We should not have a shadow near to our installations. Okay, because if there is shadow, we will not get the input, and if we will not get the input, how can we create the output? Okay, this is the more important part. Okay. So there are the things which are more complex. I do not wish to go into it, and the thing only here I wish to make is that they are more or less concerned towards the space-based installation. Okay, because mainly you can see here that they are group 3-5 semiconductors, and those group 3-5 semiconductors actually have higher costs associated with them, but they are very long lasting and they are resistant to heat and radiation. So that's why they are basically used for the space installations where the cost related to launching is related to the weight. And in that case, as they are thin film devices within a very small thickness, they can have high efficiency. So within a very small weight, they can have a larger value for space installations, where they can power them for almost 10 to 20 or 30 years. Okay, so that's why they are more prominent for space installations. Uh, there are organic solar cells, and now the perovskites are coming up very fast. And now in the perovskite also, there are organic, inorganic perovskites, which are important. In perovskites, although within 5 to 6 years, they have shown a tremendous improvement in their efficiency and almost reached the level of silicon level efficiencies. The bad thing is that their stability in air, they are still not stable in air, and within only 1 hour or 10 within 1 hour to 10 hour study, they have shown their degradation in efficiency almost 50%. So people are looking towards it, and definitely in the future people will come up, because now with the advancement in inorganic perovskites, people are claiming that degradation in the quality of the material has been limited. So this is the last part which I just wish to discuss, that from lab bench to market, because the whole of the discussion that we have done, I wish to take that, or someone will wish to take it to industry, because why one should do all this effort unless and until his product will go to the industry. So that is not an easy task. We have to go through several certificates, we have to go through several testings, standardization, before which we can actually take our laboratory product to the market. Okay, so there is a need to have a toxicity testing. What is toxicity testing? Let's say, for an example, gallium arsenide. In gallium arsenide, there is arsenic is involved, and arsenic is toxic in nature. So in that case, we have to check whether the product which is coming out of that arsenic is toxic for humans, toxic for nature or not. Then heat and thermal cycling testing, there is moisture testing, because of which perovskites has not gained that much of industrial value. UV radiation, silicon is a material which degrade more in UV radiations. What is the prominent effect of moisture and humidity? What is the effect of water? What is the effect of oxygen? Because oxygen is very prominently available in the air. And then finally, we need to have a certification from the standardized society or standardized laboratory. For example, for India, we have right now National Institute of Solar Energy. So finally, on the basis of that, we will move to the industry. On the basis of that, we can claim that yes, my product is now market ready. And what about funding? Why I have written this? Because in India, most of the problem is related to funding. We do not able to get most of the time the funding to take our product to the market. Okay, this is all about. I think I have designed more number of slides. I should restrict myself to less number, because I have already consumed more time. And still, with all these advancements, still need and future for innovation among young researchers is required. And finally, the only thing about the future that you could not predict was the history you didn't know. And with this, I just wish to end my talk. And the future that you wish to grasp is just depends on you. What future you should like to see. And now the onus is on us. The best way to protect the future is to create it. And the future, as I have started in the beginning and told you, that the future is now. Because after 10 years, if I'll complain that this should be done better, or this should be done in a better way, I was foolish of myself. Okay. So here I am just stopping myself. Thank you all. I just wish to take questions from your side. Saurabh, it is on you. Is there any other question? I am just I am just giving my email address also on the chat box, and if somebody wish to have some kind of discussion, they can write it to me.
Hello. Hello. Good afternoon, sir. Sir, it was a really nice presentation. My question is that is solar panels or any research work can be done using microwave engineering or any future scope of microwave engineering in related to solar energy or solar cells?
The thing is that microwaves are not included in the solar spectrum. I have already shown you the solar spectrum. So there, if you can by some way use the microwave technologies designs, let's say you are designing waveguides and all in
Yes, sir.
microwaves.
Yes,
So
sir.
by some way, or microwave antennas or so, by some way or other, if you can take inspiration from that design and try to modulate that design for the spectrum which we are getting from the sun, then yes, there is a possibility. But if you will think that directly I can incorporate my microwave waveguides to propagate light spectrum, this will not work.
Okay. Okay, sir.
You can modify or you can take your inspirations to design better devices using what you have already known. So, but directly you cannot implement them.
Right, sir. Okay, sir.
Okay,
Thank you, sir.
okay, good day. Okay, thank you. Oh, no, I just welcome. Thank you. Thank you for your kind gesture. I just wish that students, if they wish to interact or if they wish to have some kind of information, which I have skipped out here, if they wish to know something related to that, they should just email me. I have already provided my email address here. Okay, so they should just email me, and if they wish to further their career or if they have some any queries, you can also means they can also write down to you, and if you have any queries from them, you just forward them to me. Okay, okay, okay. Okay, okay, okay. Can I disconnect now? Okay, thank you.
Excuse me, sir. Sir, this form is need permission to fill. So I think you have to permit us to edit. Yes, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now it's opening. Thank you so much, sir. Yes. Thank you so much, sir.